So before we actually get into exactly what SafetiBase is, we'll first talk about what the problem was that we were trying to address. So as you know, hopefully most of you know or are familiar with, the age-old problem that we've had is that our industry is segregated into various silos. And so what we typically end up with is the client will hand over information to the designer will hand it over to the contractor, and ultimately go to the operation and maintenance, and somewhere down the line back to the client again. So each group has their own way of putting all this information together in their own templates. So typically as information gets passed along, it can sometimes get lost in translation. And the other issue that we also, well, I've personally faced, and I'm sure many others have as well, is in order to cover our backs, typically what we end up doing is we end up overloading our risk registers. So more often than not, the risks that we have in there are not necessarily relevant to the site in question. So we found that typically in the industry, it's complicated, unstructured, and disconnected. So in order to try and address this problem, what we did at Atkins, a colleague in the bottom left, thought that it would be a good idea to try and attach risk information, health and safety specifically, into a model. And we thought at the time it would be called risk beacons. We put that on Idea Management Platform, and we realized that we're not the only ones obviously thinking about this. So rather than going at this alone, let's see whether we can get a group behind it. Managed to get a group together, worked together with the I3P, secured some funding, and after we've deployed and developed the tool, we were successful in winning the Construction Computing Awards 2018. So, as I mentioned, we have a group who are sitting behind this. The main team that is dealing with this at the moment is myself, Neil, Andrew, Mike, and Robin. But we've got a wide variety of different groups at the bottom, as you can see. So we thought we'd test our hypothesis to see whether or not the problem that we thought we had was actually genuine and not just try and solve a problem that maybe didn't actually exist. So we tried to get some information from Tideway, and this could be for any project. It's not to blame these projects in particular. It's trying to take the information and risks from Tideway and reuse them on HS2. We found that going through the process, it was quite cumbersome, and actually to get it to the other end wasn't of great value going through all of that process. So we decided that what we were going to do was, as I mentioned before, those three things that we were looking at, what we actually wanted to do was develop a system that would be simple, structured, and connected. So, as I mentioned, through the I3P, the work that we then looked to do was standardize the templates in which we will execute the work, and obviously on a web-based portal that makes it far easier for everyone to view, rather than just being some unstructured Excel sheet. We then try to visualize it, as Gordon mentioned in his slides previously, that visualization is quite useful in this, bringing more information into the work, so that's where 3D Repo is a part of this. And then how we can visualize that on a project level as well as at a portfolio level if a client or group were to have this on a variety of their projects. So fortunately, I'm probably one of the only presenters who does not have a video. I'm just going to quickly go through these snips that I've taken out to try and speed it up, as I appreciate you probably do want to get back to the pizza. So what we've got here is, for those of you familiar with 3D Repo, this is essentially the second button on the top left-hand corner, which is SafetiBase. And here we've got a wastewater treatment plant with a few risks dotted around the place. You can see that we've got this pin here, the red one in particular in between the gates, and we've got various others dotted around the site. Typically, they go from gray to green to yellow to amber to red to demonstrate the severity of the risk. Here, as you can see with the arrow, I'm just going to demonstrate what the risk looks like. So if I were to click on any of those risks, it would take me straight into that pin location. So quite good to identify where that would be. Once you click that button, it will demonstrate all the information there, which is linked back to PAS 1192 Part 6. It's not the flavor of Atkins or the flavor of Mott or the flavor of any other consultant or contractor. It really is trying to follow an industry standard. So as you can see, we've got all this information in there. You'd fill this information in, and as all of you know, when you fill in risks, you have your likelihood and your consequence. Bringing that together will give you the level of the risk, And as you mitigate this now and you show the demonstration of mitigation, that will come through as an auditable trail. So if I was a designer filling this in and I was taking this to a contractor, they would still see those risks. You can never delete a risk, it will always remain in the system. And as I mentioned just now, that's the audit trail at the bottom. So I think yesterday I was fiddling with it just to demonstrate that, but you can see that I've changed the mitigated risk from high to very high and then back from very high to high. And it won't let me get rid of that now. So it's demonstrated where those changes have occurred. All of you have seen visualization dashboards before. This is one of those specifically for SafetiBase. So what it does is it connects directly with 3D Repo's platform. So we're able to pull all the information through, demonstrate the different types of risks, and of course you could create your own visualization platform. It doesn't necessarily have to be this one in Power BI, but you can pick all this information through, look at it from a project level, and of course if you connected it in the right way, you could look at a portfolio level as well. So great opportunities for different organizations to see how they're doing this. So that's what we've done to date. Now, of course, there's still a few things that we're doing as well. We're not just done that and pack up shop. So Gordon mentioned that there was some work under the Lloyd registers, and what we're looking to do with HSE, so closely working with them, is to try and see whether we can access their information via currently an MVP tool, which would be a CSV file, to demonstrate how we can take all these categories and find out whether there's possible forms of risks or mitigations that can address our problems. So this would be going straight into that CSV file and pulling all this information out. And at the moment, this is just conceptual, so it may look different in the future. This is just for your viewing pleasure. The next stage beyond that is to then look at how HSE and the ODI will work together with ourselves to try and develop a a health and safety data trust across the industry. So we feel that if we've got HSE working together with us on this basis, and obviously as Gordon mentioned, the intention is to try and provide that open learning platform. As we're an institution which is essentially for the industry, by the industry, we feel that we're in a good place to work together with a variety of different people, whoever really is interested in it, to try and bring this to light. What does a data trust mean? So on the basis of this, just like you have a trust for a building or an asset, if you're assuming that the data was the asset, you'd have that hosted centrally, and you'd have beneficiaries and settlers, people providing information in. For the settlers, people taking information out, and then the trustees providing that relevant access. And that's what it generally is in a nutshell. Some other things that we're looking at, so naturally you can understand that we're trying to collate a lot of information, a lot of data. So what can we do with that in the future? At the moment, you'd be tagging all your risks in. The benefit of that is you can obviously filter it. So let's say I was looking on a linear project, it would allow me to filter a kilometer, let's say it's 40 kilometers of road, and I just wanted to see what those risks were in the first kilometer because I'm only going to work at chainage 200, then that's great for filtering. But as far as we're looking at going into the future, what we're hoping to do is rather than look at descriptive risks on the basis of how we put the information in ourselves, it's more so when we have that historical data, how we can use that to actually predict what the potential risks might be of assigning certain objects together or certain assemblies, and then what the relevant mitigations for that would be. So to wrap up then for my presentation, we do say across the industry quite a lot that safety is something that's really important. So the intention of SafetiBase is really not just to say that safety is important, but to show that it truly is. Thank you very much.